Rajasthan has tabled the Coaching Centre Control and Regulation Bill aimed at curbing student suicides in coaching hubs like Kota, where 28 deaths took place in 2023 alone. Spurred by a High Court push and public outcry over academic pressure, the bill mandates registration, fines violators up to 5 lakhs, and does set up a helpline. But critics say it falls short, dropping a key under 16 age limit and dodging fee caps or mental health mandates. With no teeth to reform the cutthroat coaching culture, some fear that it's more of a nod to oversight than a lifeline for stressed students.
The much-awaited Rajasthan Coaching Regulation Bill tabled in the State Assembly. The aim behind the bill: reduce stress for students in coaching classes and bring down the alarming suicides of young students prepping for medical and engineering exams. The bill aims to set up a coaching authority of 12 members to regulate coaching institute, to have committees in every district to monitor coaching centers, to provide psychological counseling for students to reduce stress, to provide remedial classes for those students who may be lagging behind, to ensure days off and recreational activities, assessments not to be held on the day after the weekend like a Sunday, exam results and assessments of students to be kept confidential, and coaching classes not to be held for more than 5 hours. It also makes it easy to get a fee refund if the student decides to drop out halfway through the coaching course. But key provisions have been omitted from the bill, which had, in its first draft, said children below 16 years should not be taken away from school and put into the rigors of coaching. In the bill tabled before the Assembly, this key provision is missing.
आलोचक कह रहे हैं कि कहीं ना कहीं कोचिंग इंडस्ट्री के प्रेशर में आके, क्योंकि उनका बिजनेस है, जितने ज़्यादा बच्चे भर्ती हों उनको पैसे मिलते हैं। आपने 16 साल का प्रावधान नहीं रखा है। काफ़ी लोगों ने कहा था कि 16 साल से पहले बच्चों को कोचिंग में दाखिला नहीं होना चाहिए।
हमने इस पे पहला प्रयास नियंत्रण का किया है। जो भी सुझाव होंगे निश्चित रूप से इसमें अभी हमने रखा है। जो भी सुझाव आएंगे उनको सम्मिलित करेंगे।
The bill also doesn't make it compulsory for children to undergo an aptitude test to see if they are fit for medical and engineering studies, leaving this option to the parents.
जो कि ड्राफ्ट के अंदर पहले ये तय हुआ था कि 16 साल तक के बच्चों को कोचिंग नहीं कराई जाएगी, लेकिन ये लोग उनको कोचिंग कराना चाहते हैं। तो मैं समझता हूँ
क्यों कराना चाहते हैं? क्या प्रेशर है?
इनकी मिलीभगत हो सकती है कोचिंग इंडस्ट्री से, क्योंकि एक बहुत बड़ी इंडस्ट्री है जो लगातार अपना व्यवसाय इस प्रकार से कर रही है। तो एक पूरा रैकेट है, इसका पूरा जांच होनी चाहिए और सरकार को सख्त बिल लेके आना चाहिए ताकि भविष्य में इस प्रकार के जो सुसाइड के केस हैं उन पे रोक लगे।
The figures for student suicides in Kota have been a cause for concern. This year, 8 students have died by suicide in Kota. Last year, the figure was as high as 26. And clearly, strong steps are needed to regulate both the ambitions of parents and the coaching industry.
जो भी स्टेप अगर गवर्नमेंट ले रही है, अगर वो स्टूडेंट्स के लिए बेनिफिशियल है तो उसका कहीं ना कहीं स्वागत करना चाहिए। मतलब बच्चा यहाँ पे आता है कोटा में अपने सपने लेकर कि भाई मैं मतलब आगे जाके डॉक्टर या इंजीनियर बनूंगा, लेकिन यहाँ पे आने के साथ ही मतलब जो माहौल उसको मिलता है, जो इन लोगों की वजह से, जो फ्रॉड लोग जो मैंने बताया, उनकी वजह से क्या होता, उनको वैसा माहौल नहीं मिल पाता। तो इस बिल की आने से कहीं ना कहीं ऐसे लोगों पे लगाम लगेगी।
The Rajasthan Coaching Regulation Bill, which has been tabled in the State Assembly today, does significantly address issues which will make the coaching environment stress-free. It has provisions for an authority that will regulate coaching centers, but 2 key provisions have been left out of the bill. It does not set an age limit in which students should be allowed entry into coaching. It also doesn't make it compulsory for an admission test to gauge the student's aptitude before admitting that student into coaching. Removing these 2 key provisions which were there in the draft bill has now raised questions about how serious is the government about actually bringing down student suicides in Kota. With camera person Jasraj, in Jaipur, Harsha Kumari Singh, NDTV.
Well, joining us now, Advocate Anubha Srivastav Sahai, President of the India-Wide Parents Association, Keshav Agarwal, Director of the Coaching Federation of India, Aarti Rajratnam, a psychologist and author. We're also joined by Maheshwar Perry, founder of Careers 360 and an educator. Thank you all very much for being with us. Keshav Agarwal, Mr. Agarwal, is it not bizarre that, a bill which is meant to protect children still allows children under the age of 16 to try out and perhaps be admitted to these coaching centers?
Now, first of all, let me clear you a few things. I hope my voice is clear.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Now, we have been talking about the 16-year age limit. Now, when we talk of coaching, it is not only Kota or Hyderabad. Coaching is being taken all over India by students. Now, if you see this draft, there are many positives and many negatives. First, let me answer your question and then I'll come to some controversial things, positive as well as negative also. Now, class 10th student who is 15 years has a right because his parents may not be educated, so he needs assistance. The child parent may be educated, but they are working, he may need assistance. Now, why is coaching existing? It is because of our school system, which has not been able to fulfill their needs. Coaching is never by compulsion, it is by choice. And now, why do we need coaching? You have Olympiads, you have JEE exam, advanced, and then NEET. All of them are elimination exam. On the basis of school study, it is not sufficient for a student to get through this. Now, 24 lakhs appearing for NET, where you have 50,000 medical seats. Do you expect a child will get through in such stiff competition? No.
Mr. Agarwal,
Then,
is the life
yeah.
of a student more important, or is it the factors that you have listed?
Life is definitely more
Right.
important.
So therefore, should we not,
one,
as highly educated people on this panel, immediately say that a child under the age of 16 should not be put into coaching centers where the intensity of preparation and the pressure is incompatible with a 15-year-old child? Should that not be what we should be arguing?
See, one is the dummy school culture. That has to be stopped right now. Under the nose of the government, if dummy schools are running, a child has the option. So first, stop that. Second, right from 8th level, introduce subjects beyond IIT, beyond science, medical. Now, commerce is introduced at 11th. Why not give the child an option in 9th?
By all means. But that doesn't answer my question. We have a crisis in Rajasthan, in Kota, and of course other parts of the country. One doesn't, the fact that children may be ending their lives elsewhere doesn't make the situation in Kota acceptable. But the fact that you have 26 students who ended their lives in 2024, 8 so far this year, and we have a bill which doesn't address either this or some other important aspects, for example, an aptitude test for students that has been made optional. Who are we kidding? I mean, what do we care about?
One more thing here you need to understand. After 10th, it is school which gives a child science. So without having science, he can't opt for these coachings. So one thing we have to make it clear, at JEE main level, in 12th, you make 75% mandatory. Now, aptitude test, if you conduct, you see today, if you see just 2 days before story, I'll tell you, a girl wanted science, her parents said no, and then education minister intervened and said no, child cannot be disallowed. So you cannot say a child is not fit at 10th level, the course which is being run. So the child has to have a chance. Once
The child has to have a chance based on their aptitude to do it. But let me bring in Aarti Rajratnam as well. Aarti, let's talk about aptitude and the compatibility of a student to one of the most intense training programs anywhere. Should we not be looking, should parents not be looking at whether their child wants to or can actually embark on this path? Shouldn't that be the priority?
So it's not just aptitude, Vishnu. I think it's aptitude, interest, and personality at some point that has to come into testing. But let me also give a context here, because I purely work with mental health and I work with educational institutions. So I'll give you what's also happening. Overall, we have not really moved away from the Industrial Revolution. We are still trying to treat children as raw material that will come into a system. And then we are looking at testing as quality control. That's not how it can be done, because the teenage brain is extremely vulnerable at this point in time, especially this 15, 16, especially after 14 years. It becomes very, very susceptible to any kind of mental illness, be it anxiety. And, though we've mentioned these numbers of 26 suicides and 8 suicides and all of that, I'm more concerned about the fact that we have a lot of other children on that spectrum who actually will be showing signs of depression, showing signs of anxiety, which are not being recorded. We are only taking the extreme numbers. That's very dangerous. Secondly, let me also put it in context here that our system has failed the child because we've forgotten that the teenager needs 3 very important things. One, their identity is emerging. We are putting them in coaching factories, not not allowing them to explore their identity, their sexuality, all of these things, which are also very essential parts of development at that point. It's not just the schooling and the testing and the entrance exams that are important at that time. When you stunt a person's personality to that level, when you stunt their development to that level, it is going to show you a lot of negative impacts in the mental health. And the third aspect of this is the age of the gangs. They need to be in peer groups. They need to, hang out together, learn from each other and things like that. And essentially in these coaching factories, that does not happen, which is why, it's important for children to have a balance of activities. And no matter how many legislations you bring in, it's not like, there's going to be somebody there in the school every day monitoring this. During the inspections, everybody fakes it. After that, you're still going to have people who are going to wake up children at, unearthly hours. We're going to keep them in classrooms, sometimes with the bare minimum of facilities and things like that, trying to get them to study and repeatedly learn the same thing. We are destroying the human brain in this. Neuroscience-wise, you have to realize that you have to allow children to make mistakes. You have to allow children to, sort of explore. You have to allow them to question, have dissent. None of these things work in the coaching factories, which is where mental health steps in. We need to realize that all of these experiences help the person. It's not enough to just clear an entrance exam. Yeah. So answering your question about aptitude, it's not just aptitude. We need to realize that there are so many aspects of development and neurological functioning that are not being taken into account.
I take your point. I take your point
thing.
Entirely, Aarti. Maheshwar Peri, founder of Career 360s. What are we looking to do with our children? Isn't that the larger issue over here? And of course, our education system has entirely failed them at so many levels that they have to engage in one of the toughest exam processes, desperate as they are to get jobs, under intense pressure from society and their parents, perhaps even peer pressure, that children are being led to end their lives. And today, after all of these years, we are talking about a watered-down bill. What does that say about our system? Mr. Peri?
I think more than the system, Vishnu, this bill essentially is not about regulation, but more about control.
Yes.
It will only farm a lot of corruption into the system because you will actually have overnight raids and midnight raids and morning raids and everything. And that's how the control system works. Because this will not prevent suicides. Whatever you do about this particular bill, this will not prevent suicides. The issue is, why do we need an entrance examination at every level? Why can't we actually say that we essentially demonetized our schooling system? You don't need to have 99%. You can just have 75% and just get through it, because ultimately you'll want to go through an entrance examination. And how does the entrance examination work? In all these coaching hubs, students from all over the country leave their schools, come to the coaching hub, study only for the entrance examination, and go back and give the state level examination, by the way. Their attendance level is all marked. It's all managed. So the issue here is not about, this bill would definitely not stop suicide, because if you look at the suicides also now, Vishnu, the 26 suicides that happened last year, most of them are above 16. So how do you deal with that situation, right? Because they get a result, or they're at the fag end, they know that they're not able to crack the examination, and that's when the suicides happen. It's not about below 16 or above 16. And two, very, very clearly, Vishnu, below 10th class, you should not be having a coaching system. By the way, someone was talking about how, a student can decide for themselves at below 16. No, sir. In the Data Protection Bill, it is very clearly mentioned that anything below 18, the parental consent is absolutely essential. So parent is going to come in up to the age of 18. We cannot change that definition just for these purposes, just because we want to have more people coming in as a supply side of it.
Anubha, isn't the problem also at a fundamental level parents? Parents at all levels. Parents from lower socioeconomic background, who put away all their money, desperate to have their children financially succeed, not being willing to consider the pressure the children are in the hope that they succeed. And then if the child does not succeed, then their world comes crashing down, not just of the child, but of that entire family structure. So it's part of a system which is so dreadfully wrong.
Thank you for having me on this show. And actually, the parents are also to be blamed, because most of the parents, they're putting pressure on their child that they want their children to become doctor and engineer. But there are so many other courses also which the students are not aware. Mm-hmm. That's why career counseling plays a very important role, which the school should also start. Even though in this regulation, it is mandatory to have a career counselor also. I think at school level, if we will have a career counselor to guide the parents, and definitely the mushrooming of these coaching institutes will cut down. And counseling of parents, as I said, is very, very important. Interaction is very important. Parents don't know how the students are interacting or how the students are behaving in school, or if they are going to any coaching center in Kota or any other state. Mostly the students, they relocate to states like Rajasthan because it is the coaching hub. And I am connected with many students from Kota, many JEE aspirants, NEET aspirants, and they keep telling me about their problems which they are facing. They're very much worried about their future because there is so much pressure in the coaching institute also, because as soon as a child from one state goes to another state and he has no friends, they feel like most of the students tell me that we don't have any friends whom we should talk. They tell me, or there are no counselors where the students can talk. So the parents' counseling is very important at the school level, and these coaching classes should be controlled. Regulation is important, but the children should not be sent to coaching classes till they are in 10th standard or at least 9th or 10th standard. Now they have removed this age limit of 16, which is really concerning, because I'm telling you that most of the parents will force their children to join these classes. There will be peer pressure also, where the students are going to join these institutes and they end up taking their lives when they don't get results, when they don't get any friends.
Let me go back to Mr. Agarwal. Mr. Agarwal, sure. Mr. Agarwal, the bills focus on registration and penalties, 2 lakhs, first violation, 5 lakhs, second, etc. That's reactive, It's not preventive. And it doesn't mandate specific mental health training for staff, or does it cap study hours, which could directly alleviate pressure. So there is no cap on the number of hours of studying. There is no specific mandate on looking after the mental health of students, right? And it focuses on punishments to the institution. So that's a reactive step. Again, how does this solve the problem of death by suicide? That's what we're talking about.
As Mr. Perry said, this bill has nothing to stop suicide. Suicides, the sole reason, there are 2-3 reasons. One, of course, I can't talk out here. In Kota, why it is happening. But one is definitely the stress and not getting through the exam. As Mr. Perry put it, right after the exam or before the exam, they gave into pressure कि उनका selection नहीं होगा. And why don't you talk about suicide in CLAT exam? Because वहाँ पे seats और इसके बीच gap नहीं है. There you have a wide gap. If you see last year NEET story, it is very much obvious why these suicides happened. 24 lakhs appearing for mere 50,000 government seats. Now you see yourself. Second, the board exams now have been made redundant. You don't carry any weightage. So why are you making schools redundant? You see the pressure is increasing. CUET exam, no board weightage. So dummy school culture is thriving, and who is making them thrive? See, understand, it's easy to blame coaching. Now, coaching came because there was somewhere need because of Olympiads or this entrance. Now, at initial level, if you don't introduce the various courses, child only knows engineering, medical, and that is what they do. Now, this bill do regulate teaching hours. They say not more than 5 hours. Okay. Now, why I am saying this is made only taking Kota as an example. Now, you just take an example of a small institute, say teaching 12 or 13 students in 4 to 5 batches. Now, they also come under preview. They will be harassed, corruption will come. How will they pay 2 lakh fine? How will they maintain a website? A student just coming for 1 hour for assistant, do you expect them to have career counselors, canteens, other things? This bill is non-implementable, and it is making only, now you see coaching, you talk only of 5-6 big institutes. No,
but Mr. Agarwal, if I can just interrupt for half a second. I understand your question. I understand your point, sir, when you say that this is part of a larger problem. But to say that it is unimplementable and we are not in a position to provide mental health facilities, particularly in smaller institutes and things like that, that is unacceptable. We have to do that. Any institution has to compulsorily have certified counselors of a certain standing whose performance as counselors has to be assessed. You don't just pick up somebody off any place and put them and say, here's my figurehead counselor who sits over there. A counselor is an important job. But to suggest that, these smaller institutes cannot have counselors, or it is unimplementable, the good parts of this, It just means that we are defeated. We are defeated and we are accepting the fact that students are ending their lives. And it's not just in Kota. I accept that point entirely, 100%. It's all over the country. But surely as educated people over here, we can accept that we have to save children. What are we doing to them?
See, again, the point is where we are talking of pressure, it is IIT, JEE and medical coaching. And even at school level, this counseling has to begin where the child spends maximum time, 6 to 7 hours.
At school, it is mandatory, but not happening. At school level, it is mandatory to have counselors, but it is not happening.
But not happening.
That is
even
the
in
main
schools,
problem.
You will not find counselors. Yeah.
So, no, you see, but that's just the point. The fact that it's not happening in so many schools doesn't allow Kota to get away with not having counselors.
The larger picture is how do you solve this problem? If you really want to solve and discuss, then the coaching institutes have to be regulated properly. Now, one thing I'll tell you, this is the 58,000 crore industry officially paying such a big, huge GST. Why don't you have a designated land where you give them the place where children can come and study in such a way and charge rent from them? Then you can regulate them in a proper way, give an environment. A counselor should be there.
58,000 crore rupee industry, respectfully, sir. And you just mentioned that it's not possible for some institutes to have counselors. But let's think about that. Let's think about that for a moment.
I am not at all against not having. I am talking of the
You are saying it is
one
unimplementable. A 58,000 crore rupee industry finds it unimplementable to ensure that children under the age of 16 are barred from entering, that it finds it unimplementable to do an aptitude test for students unless it is, that's been made compulsory, right? No age barrier for joining. So this is all good. This is all acceptable for us. The psychological support, no mention on the quality of the psychologists, the counselors who would be involved in this, right? Nothing. We're back to square one.
No.
All right, look, I'm interrupting over here because we're out of time. But it's a nationwide problem. It has to do with how we structure education in this country and ultimately the larger question of jobs and where these coaching centers lead children to. Some may do tremendously well, get the jobs that they want. So many don't. And let's spare a thought for all of these students and the process of development for a child. It's much more than rote learning at coaching centers. We'll take a short break. There's more coming up.